Hello, everybody. Presby Kennedy here with a little new type of video format for you. These are Ilderon D&D Stories. They're little short stories of things that have happened inside of the campaign world that I run. So this story is That Time I Turned My Players Evil. A few things before we get started on this story. This was the opening for a group, and I didn't do as much prep work back then of making sure all of the characters were kind of in alignment with the type of story we were telling. And I was a newer dungeon master back when this story happened. And then also, I informed all the players when they joined, I'm a little bit different of a typical type of dungeon master. I told the players I was trying to build a living world and I wasn't running a typical campaign where villains wait for the party to reach certain plot points before moving forward with their goals. How I was running the world was the villains were always there, they were always present, and they were always moving forward with their plans, whether or not the players were doing anything. So when my villains were off screen, I would look at my notes and I'd say, well, it makes sense for them to be here, and I'd place the villain there, and then I just would handle whatever the villain did later on as the story progressed. So for this campaign, let's talk about the plot a little bit, because I guess it's really important for us needing to understand the story. And I might have messed up in setting this up for my players when we were initially going about this campaign. So we have a evil McMagic lady. She is the bad villain of this campaign, the big bad villain. And for the context of this story, we'll have another character. He's called Sinister Mr. Merchant Man. And we'll have Scary Demon Wolfman. These are all villains inside of the story. And the party is composed of, what's the easiest way to think of this party? We'll call them Karl Marx and Company. They were very strange heroes. They were communists and they wanted to build a communist utopia and just make sure everybody in the world, was able to have just wonderful fairness and equality. And yeah, so we'll just call them Karl Marx and Company. All right, so with that and all of the characters out of the way, let's get into the story. The story starts in a military fortress for a specific nation, and the general plot of what's happening is one nation. There's a border conflict brewing between two nations. One nation is recruiting more and more people to man the military fortress at the edge of their border in case things explode. And the players are mercenaries that are being recruited and paid to, join this militia. And as they are going into this fortress, the fortress is sabotage. And it is slowly being revealed that, this border conflict, everything that's going on with it, there's a group of people who's manipulating this conflict for their benefit. The players don't know who that is, but the fortress is sabotage, and that's where our campaign starts. So they go inside of it. The fortress is sabotaged, explosions go off, and the players are scrubbing the floor on, a bottom level of this keep, and they essentially get buried in it, and they have to go through the catacombs and tunnels underneath the fortress. What they discover as they're trying to get out of the fortress is there's a secret library inside of the fortress. And this fortress was built above and over this library to protect all of these thousands of years of knowledge that are beneath this fortress. So let's call this mistake number 1. I thought it would be a really, really cool intro to their campaign to introduce the big bad villain early and then bring her back in when the party is level 10 or whatever. But that might have been, well, that definitely was the first mistake. So the party is going through these catacombs and they stumble their way into this library and they come across Evil McMagic Lady and her bodyguard, Scary Demon Wolfman. And she is in this library looking for a specific book as they stumble in. The party looks at her, looks at the Scary Demon Wolfman, and they immediately start panicking, but know that this is where they have to fight. She gets ready to cast some spells at them, and Scary Demon Wolfman runs to attack them. All of this, of course, is happenstance. So they don't even know what she's doing or who she is, but they know she shouldn't be down here. And then the general of the fortress burst into the room, knowing that this library needed to be protected, and whoever was sabotaging the fortress was probably after it, and helps the party scare her off. She has the book she needs already. She grabs Scary Demon Wolfman, and Evil McMagic Lady teleports away. And that was their first encounter with that. They get into a little verbal debate with the general of the fortress and end up getting kicked out of the military they were just recruited in. Seeing how terrifying things are on the border, the party rightly says, you know what? Um, we don't want anything to do with this, and we're going to go in the complete opposite direction of the plot. Let's go to this city over here. And they pick a random city on the map that is on the other side of the region. And I shouldn't have let them do that, but I like running a sandbox world. So, trying to stay true to D&D, that city was the city where Evil McMagic Lady was living for the past couple years, and it's also where she's been kind of operating out of. So remember when I said I put my villains in a place and they're doing things in the background while the plot and the story and everything the characters are doing is happening? Yeah, that's where I put her. So the players head to the city, and they start poking around, and we'll call this mistake number 2. They start poking around, and they run into her sitting in a tavern. She is simply reading the book that she just stole a few days earlier, and she looks at the party. They look back at her, and Scary Demon Wolfman's there, and Evil McMagic Lady closes her book, uh, lets out a gasp, and one of the players from the party, of course, they're Karl Marx and company. Rather than just keeping his head down and going to a different part of the tavern, walks up to her table and he starts insulting her. And so me, as the dungeon master at this point, I'm just like, well, it's the big bad villain. You can't just walk up and insult her and, there be no consequences. But also, I don't want to TPK you on session number 2. So, yeah, that was a difficult situation for me. So what ends up happening is I give the villain right there, Evil McMagic Lady, has a character flaw. She does not like killing people with her own hands. It makes her feel icky. And so that's one of the reasons she always has the bodyguard around. The bodyguard grappled one of the players, and another one tried to run away. And rather than killing them, what she ended up doing right then and there was kidnapping those 2 players and selling them into slavery. And it was a really, really, really cool storyline that happened because it made the party bond. And then one of them had like a magical slave collar that they had to go on, a small little quest to get the collar off. And I was like, yes, great. They all hate the villain. They all, have bonded as a party. They're going to be such great heroes. They have a reason to move forward and stop this lady. Like, Evil McMagic Lady's plans are not going to succeed. While they are doing all of this stuff in town, they stumble across a mansion. And remember how I told you they were carved and Company, that's going to introduce our background villain, Sinister Mr. Merchant Man. The party instantly said, yeah, he's a bad dude. We need to go kill Sinister Mr. Merchant Man. Which I thought maybe that could be handled another way, but sure, I let them go after the wealthiest merchant in the world. So they fight this guy, and they find out that, they fight this guy, and this guy is like, he's no, he's, well, he's a merchant. He's not very combat like able, but he's rich and he's got like 8 bodyguards there. The party is fighting and fighting and fighting. At this point, they're like level 2 or 3, and they pick, a fight with one of the wealthiest people in the world. What ends up happening is Karl Marx and Company realize they can't beat this guy and all of his bodyguards and decide to all retreat. And at this point, they're all at like 1 HP or 2 HP or 3 HP and barely, barely, barely get out of this fight alive as they run away. So Sinister Mr. Merchant Man pretty much owns this town, and they know that like nowhere that they're going to really go is going to be safe. And again, remember how I said I put my villains somewhere progressing their plot in the background? They stop and think, they're like, what's the most deserted, secluded location that nobody would think to look for us? And it's like, oh, let's go to the ancient mausoleum inside of the graveyard. And that's where Evil McMagic Lady was. Because what happened with Evil McMagic Lady was, she, from the book, she got the information she needed, and she knew the next step of her plan. She needed to kidnap a guy and essentially intimidate him into helping her. So she already told the party once, when she sold them into slavery, stay out of her way. And so the party now, completely bloodied, completely exhausted, all at 1 HP, run into the graveyard. And who is at the graveyard? Evil McMagic Lady and Scary Demon Wolfman. And she has this bloody, beaten man in her hand, and she's holding, the collar of his shirt. And she looks at the party, and the party looks at her, and she looks at the party, and exhales. And so in my head, I know this is an unavoidable TPK. This is the part where I kill my party. But bless the fighter. Bless the fighter. He steps forward and he says, Evil McMagic Lady, we are your biggest fans, and the reason why we've been running into you over and over and over and over again is because we want to work for you. And I am just like, wait, what? And the player looks at me out of character, and the player looks at me out of character and says, Brandon, this results in a TPK. There's no way we get out of this without all of us dying, and this is the only way that I think that we might have a chance at living. You either let this roleplay play out, or you kill us all on the spot right here. And I'm like, let's see where it goes. So after some discussion, the party finds out that Evil McMagic Lady's father is Sinister Mr. Merchant Man, and she hates her father, and she also faked her own death, and he thinks she's dead. And so the party is able to find a little bit of common ground, and the players are just like, hey, you know what? She's creating a new world order. We don't like this world. Might as well be on the winning side. And they swap sides, and they become henchmen for the villain. And that was mistake number 3. I lost count, unfortunately. But yeah, so that's how I turn my players evil. And if anybody's interested, I can tell more stories about this campaign. But this campaign ends with a TPK. It's pretty epic. They march in and they try and fight a 18th level druid on the orders of Evil McMagic Lady, and the druid wipes the floor with them. They are all level 9 or 8 at this point because they're her henchmen. She didn't care if they lived or died. But yeah, if you enjoyed this story, definitely subscribe to the channel and I will try and put out more of these videos if they do well. Have a great evening and have a great day. Bye.